You have to think about it only when there's multiple mics on one source, or a DI and a mic on one source, or a DI and two mics on one source. The point is, multiple mics, you got to think about phase. If you are recording just the DI by itself, you don't need to think about phase, because phase is only about multiple mics capturing something at the same time. That's the only thing you have to worry about. So keeping that in mind, what's going on, my peoples? Let's talk real quick about some questions you guys had about phase. Now, I was having a conversation with DobroCat1, who is an old hand. He's been doing this for a while. The dude obviously knows what's up, and I love building this community of people who know what's really good. This guy is saying auto align is a great plugin, and this isn't the first time I've heard it. Another person mentioned this also later, so I'm actually going to check this thing out, because a couple people now are talking about it, and this guy is swearing by it. He says it's awesome, so that's cool. He's basically saying he uses a Royer 122 and a Mic Tech PM9 with auto align, and he's using auto align a lot. He's specifically saying he always gets his guitar mics as close as possible to in phase while he's tracking, but then he'll still use this auto align to really fine tune it. And he elaborates by saying when you have drums with tons of mics up and other instruments, acoustics, a lot of things with multiple mics, it's a valuable plugin to use. Okay, let's try it out. I'm going to demo this thing and see if I like it, and I'll let you guys know what I think about that. Thank you for the suggestion, DobroCat. Awesome. In my experience to date, I've used Waves in phase, and I like that one a lot. Prior to using that, I used to do the Warren Hart method of putting a delay plugin like Time Adjuster, which is in samples, and I believe comes stock with Pro Tools, so you don't have to buy anything. And you could literally just highlight a section of audio and then make sure you're counting, in samples, and then you can see exactly what the length that you highlighted was in samples, and then you put that into this Time Adjuster plugin, and it will delay one of the signals. So on that note, let's talk about other comments we got about phase. This guy, Barryon, awesome question. We love it. Do phase problems only happen if it's recorded with mics, or does it happen with a DI and XLR out as well? Very critical question here. Oh, and let me just first give a shout out to Nadim Guitar, or maybe it's Nadim Guitar. Either way, he understands what's really good, and he gave a great answer. And I love that people can come here and get great answers, and I'm going to second this answer. He's basically saying, also got to mention KW9172. You had the right answer. Nice job. That if you're recording a DI simultaneously with a microphone on your amp, you will have to deal with phase, because those two signals are not going to arrive at the same time. If you can just understand one thing about phase, it's only a thing when you're recording multiple mics. When I say a thing, I mean it's only something to pay attention to and have to deal with when you're recording multiple mics on a source or a DI and a mic. They're both recorded at the same time, but one is slightly later than the other. As a result, they are not going to be in phase. You're going to have to slide the DI a little bit later, because it takes the DI less time to get into the computer compared to your amp in the other room's got to go through. First, it's got to make a sound to the amp. Then the sound gets captured by the microphone. It's got to travel through the cable. By the time it gets in there, it's not the same time as the DI. It's going to be later. So what you have to do is make the amp signal a little earlier to match up with the DI, or make the DI a little bit later to match up with the amp signal. Now, thorough answer. So Nadim Guitar, good call. Okay, here we go. It's Slow Creep 6978. Cool name. I like it. No, I'm not even kidding. It's cool. So here we go. If I take the exact same mono audio track, he's asking, basically, he's trying to understand the concept here of what phase really is and what's happening. So I appreciate that. He's saying, if I take the exact same mono audio track, duplicate it, and invert one, the result is silence, correct? The answer to that is yes. Picture a waveform vertically like a mountain. That's like when the wave is at the top, that is pushing. When it's under, that's pulling. If you picture two forces pushing and pulling on a desk. If they're exactly equal, there will be no sound, which is why your question here, the answer is yes. If you invert one of them after just duplicating it, you're going to have the exact opposite. So you'll have pushing and pulling, which will create 0 because it's the exact same file. Now that's the thing. It won't ever be the exact same file if you perform it twice. So you never have to worry about guitars being out of phase if those multiple guitars are multiple performances. If you just duplicate it in the DAW, you'll always have to worry about phase, and it's never going to sound good. If you perform it separately, you won't have to worry about phase. In other words, perform it once, capture it on all the mics in phase, pan it left, perform it again, play it again, capture it on all the mics, pan that right. You're never going to worry about phase. Now, I recommend going hard left and hard right in choruses, in things you need huge, big, wide. But in verses, make things narrow, because the idea here is nothing's wide if everything's wide, and nothing's narrow down the center if everything's narrow down the center. So as a result, you got to use both. The contrast is what makes stuff sound great. Wherever you pan one mic, you pan the other. They're attached. They should be attached. You should not treat them separately. You should not EQ them separately. You're recording it, making it in phase, then treat them as one. So if you treat it as one and you wind up panning that guitar you just recorded to the left, you'll never get a phase issue ever by recording another guitar and panning it to the right. I've also said that to widen the stereo field, use different guitars. If not different guitars, different pickups. If not different pickups, use a different amp head, use a different distortion pedal, just change up the sound a little bit to make the stereo field wider, okay? But the critical thing here, which I want everyone to understand, is that even if you have an acoustic guitar, don't just duplicate the track. You have to perform it again. This is the same thing with vocals. There's never a good reason to duplicate your vocal just to have an out-of-phase vocal. In order, like, a lot of people do that because they think that's how they get the vocal louder. They don't realize that, yeah, the volume's going up, but it's also sucking a lot every time you do that. What you are doing is doubling performances. You're performing it again on guitar, on vocal, on whatever you're doing. By doing that, you never have to worry about the phase because you're a human being. You're not a computer. So because of that, the waveforms will never be so close that they cancel each other out. They're going to be enough different because it's a different performance that it will be fine. And this is always the case. You won't ever get guitars out of phase by panning them if they're different performances. And if they started in phase to start with, and if you're treating the mics as one, you got to be treating all your mics as one. It's got to be separate performances. Then you pan it however. Doesn't matter. You might get phase issues if you took one mic and panned it left and the other mic and pan it right. Will probably not sound good. But let me say this. There are no rules. So if you are trying to make your guitar sound out of phase on purpose, then sure, do that. Do that. Do that every time, all right? But I don't recommend it unless you're going for that sound, okay? So I don't want to let this go too long. I think I covered everybody's phase questions. And if I didn't, throw it in. I'll get back at you. If you have any questions, leave them in the comments. If you'd like your song mixed and mastered, check out our special offer, all right? You can hear what we can do. If you need mixing and mastering lessons, hit me up. We do screen share or not if you don't want a screen share, all right? So whatever it is, happy to help. Evan Jaffe, Custom Cut Studios. More videos to come. Please hit that like and subscribe button. It really helps me out a lot. Helps the channel. Talk to you soon. Remember, you guys got this. Take it easy.